Hello, everyone. Jim Collison. I'm here with Ryan Wolf. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live, and good to see you here. Couple instructions, just kind of as we get started. Some things that we'd love to have you do is we'd love to have you post your top five there in the LinkedIn chat. So if you would take a second, put your top five in there, and we'd love to see that. As well as we'd love to hear, since we're here talking about strengths-based goal setting, we would love to hear what your 2022 goals are, and maybe one at a time. Might be easier to digest that way, but we'd love to hear what your 2022 goals are. Just put them there in chat. While we're setting up, I'm here with Ryan Wolf. And Ryan, let's get to know you a little bit. Could you give us maybe your top five and then tell us what you do for Gallup?
You bet. So great to be here with you, Jim. Always a great day when I can see you live on my computer screen. So glad we're here together and certainly excited to have everyone join us. And I see some comments coming through, some top fives. My top five are discipline, achiever, futuristic, activator, and harmony. And I'm a well-being lead at Gallup, so I serve all of our associates and family members, and also our clients and the public, helping them kind of integrate well-being into the work that they do already.
And so at this time of year, we spend, we oftentimes, it's a common exercise we go through setting goals. When we talk about strengths-based goals, Ryan, give us a little bit. How are those different than just goals?
Yeah, well, strengths-based goals really help us focus in on what we do best. So they really help us take advantage of all the things that we do with ease, excellence, and enjoyment.
And why well, go back, let's go back to that ease, excellence, and
Hmm.
enjoyment. Like,
Yeah.
what is it about that that's kind of important in the process of setting goals?
Well, a lot of times I see, and I'm guilty of this too, is I set goals or we set goals to kind of help mitigate maybe something that is going wrong or something that we need
Mm,
to fix. So this really helps us shed some positive light on what we can do and the things that we do well already. So really kind of kind of helps you activate the talents that really only you have, and it's kind of it's the way to help you unlock so much of your potential. When you kind of think about strengths-based development in general, it's really highly researched, it's highly practiced, and it really it supports this awesome reality that there's something within you and me, Jim, that is outstanding and ready to be revealed to everyone.
Ryan, you and I spent some time in 2021 talking a lot about well-being. We put a five-part well-being series together out of our
Hmm.
book, Well-Being at Work. Why is it important also to think about well-being in the context of goal setting? What is it about that that helps us?
Yeah, so this is a framework we've actually been practicing at Gallup for quite a while. So creating goals, obviously for our career, for our work, but also for the other four elements that we know are so important to our lives. So there's career, social, financial, physical, and community well-being that we've revealed through our world poll studies that help everyone. That are so important to everyone, they're actionable, and they can help us live our most thriving life. So it's important that we create goals around each of them and that we see the connections, the kind of interrelatedness between those elements of well-being and how our goals can, let's say we're just creating a simple career goal, but it's good to reflect on how that goal can trickle down and also impact everything else that we know is so important in our life.
Mm, mm. Riley is behind the scenes, and I'm going to ask her to post the link. We have a page that we've put together. So if you're watching this and maybe a little overwhelmed with the content throughout any of our time today, we've put a page together for you, and I'll ask Riley to maybe throw that link in the chat so folks can find it there. We'll definitely post it in when we post this to YouTube or later on. We'll post that there so you can get access to it. Ryan, oftentimes when we're setting goals, we think about setting SMART goals. And can you talk a little bit about that? I know that's a framework that a lot of folks are pretty comfortable with, so I don't know if we need to dive super deep into it. But
Sure.
can you refresh us on that SMART setup?
Y- Yeah, you bet. So SMART is definitely an acronym that a lot of us have seen or heard. So specific goals, measurable, actionable, uh, realistic or relevant. I've seen it both ways.
Mhm.
Is the R there, and then time bound. So that just helps us kind of create some uh, goals that are tangible and also shareable. And rather than just perhaps being like the BHAG goal, if you've ever heard of that framework, so the big, hairy, audacious goals, which is a great framework, but it might be more visionary versus SMART goals that are more tangible.
We're getting a lot of individuals putting their top five in the chat. We love that. I'd also love to hear or see a few more. I've seen a few of these already, but I'd love to see your what your 2022 goals are. And as we kind of work through this framework, Ryan, one of the two things I see get left out of goals uh, the most are this idea of measurable and this idea of time. I think those are
Hmm.
the two. We often say like, "Oh, I'd like to lose weight." Well,
Hmm.
okay, how much and by when? Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that idea of measuring and then this idea of time and why they're so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it just kind of goes back to having something that's tangible and something that is trackable over time so
Mm.
we can benchmark either ourselves against our own personal achievement or maybe against someone or something else. Let's say we've got competition high in our top five and we're really motivated to see what the top of the industry is doing. That's a smart way to utilize a goal, and that's kind of specific, or use measurement in that specific um, uh, kind of example. Time bound is also helpful. Speaking of time, really, if you think about it, Jim, we're talking about goals a lot right now. It's January, but goal setting doesn't need to happen just right now. And when you're making goals right now, they don't need to be annual goals. They can be goals for today. They can be goals for next week and next month and next quarter. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind too, and it's important to look into your strengths, your top 5 strengths, and even deeper into your 34 and really understand maybe where some things like where's futuristic for me, where are things like adaptability. So those are kind of some strengths where, boy, if I've got futuristic, I might want to set some annual goals or maybe even some decade goals. But if I've got adaptability, boy, I might not want to set something that's too far out there. I might need some flexibility within the goals and make them a little bit shorter term.
I love this comment. Recently heard someone say smarter, adding the ER to the end of smart for evaluate and redo. I love that idea of okay, how did we do on this? Because oftentimes, especially this time of year, we set these goals, then they get left on the piece of paper, and we get to July and like, we haven't done any of these, and then we quit, right, doing any of them. And so I love that idea, Ryan, one of being strength specific in the sense of,
Hmm.
hey, what do I have the best chance of actually achieving in this when we add our own strengths to the equation. I love the idea of when you said adaptability. I have all these influencing themes that want to make me a firefighter, not a farmer. And I'm just like your example. I think you were probably thinking of me as you
Of
were saying this,
course I was.
in the sense that, yeah, annual goals don't mean a lot for me. I'm almost thinking about framework goals that help me month over month. How do I
Hmm.
apply those things, and then how do I look at them in the short term? For me, a ranger maximizer, I can be spinning a lot of plates. I can always be doing more. So the numbers are important to me. How many of can I do more than I did last year? Can I do more than I did last month? Can I do more today than I did yesterday? Very short term,
Hmm.
thinking in that. And I think I think that's okay. We oftentimes think about this idea of it being action oriented versus being outcome oriented. And when we think about the strengths lens through that, can you talk a little bit about those two
hmm
orientations?
Yeah, you bet. So I love the smarter idea, Jim. I'll address your question in a second.
Yeah.
Smarter is great. I also I would encourage you to kind of just explore whatever framework works best for you. So smarter's great. There's Whoop out there. There's BHAG. There's several of them. There's really no shortage of literature or opinion on what the best framework is. Smarts might be a good one. So adding strengths at the end of
Mm,
smart could be a way that you go about doing it. It really kind of all depends on what you feel like really clicks for you, and that might really depend on your talents, your strengths, and your top five. So coming back to kind of results oriented and action based oriented goals, I would kind of encourage you to think about what you can choose and infuse in terms of your goal. So when you think about infuse, I realize that kind of a lot of us maybe already have goals set in mind, on paper. We're coming with goals in hand already into this session, but I'd really like you to think about, kind of look at your goals that you've already set and think about how you can infuse your strengths into them and kind of rewrite them, recommit to them, and maybe kind of reshare with your team and kind of your best partners. When you think about choose um, new goals and choosing them based purely on your strengths and specifically your top five. So choosing strengths that you want to utilize, that you want to focus on, and really kind of design goals based upon those areas that kind of that you have your greatest capabilities in. So a couple let's just do an example for each. So first for infuse, let's say that you've got a goal to increase sales conversions by like 10%. So that's a results oriented goal, right? So with infuse, what you can do is come in and kind of create, let's say you've got input and individualization in your top five. You can kind of rewrite that goal to say something like, I will learn and discover about potential clients. I'll spend an extra 5 minutes researching them and their industry prior to our next conversation or the first outreach, utilizing input and individualization so I can kind of bring extra value to the conversations that we have. So with that infusion, you took a results oriented goal and created some process around it. Both are great, but it's kind of a way to tackle both. When you think about choose, so infuse and choose, with choose, let's say you're starting with a couple of strengths that you really want to focus on. Let's say achiever and woo. Everyone loves someone who's got woo in their top five. They're gonna be great at ice breaking and getting the conversation started. So, because they're in your top five, you're choosing to create a new goal with those in mind. So your goal could be something like, I'm going to use my achiever and my woo to create several new lists of people who I should network with, who
mm,
could either become potential partners or could kind of introduce me to partners. And the results of this action is that it will help me increase my sales conversion. So,
mm.
a couple different ways to think about it.
Yeah, it's a great walkthrough, Ryan, of kind of how to get it done. Brandon asked this great question out there. He says, "What if I've got both adaptability and futuristic in his top six? How would you structure your goals?" And let me, while you're thinking about that, Ryan, let me just say I think the most underutilized report that we have that helps with goal setting is our Strengths Insight Guide.
Yeah.
Those are those individualized statements for you based on all 34, but but in a top five format, and that gives you these statements to help you kind of understand. I like to go through that insight guide and circle the words that just pop out to me. In other words, to give me some ideas. They're also kind of the first some of the first work in theme dynamics for people. In other words, how do all these themes kind of come together? No theme lives in isolation. There's no
Hmm.
one single theme. So how do they work together? In this, Brandon, in this particular example, Brandon's talking about both adaptability and futuristic in his top six. So Brandon, that the one that is number six would be factored in on that strengths insight guide available for you in Gallup Access. You can log in and look at that report, bring it up, and start to do some work with it. But specifically, Ryan, in this case, when we have two themes, in some cases, like think about it, might be adaptability and deliberative, where right the themes themselves are seemingly maybe contradictory. We know that's not true. We know
Right.
no themes contradict each other, but give maybe Brandon a little insight on this question around adaptability and futuristic and setting goals.
Yeah. So, Jim, you let it off perfectly, and I would just say, just um, to emphasize that even more, would be to do both. So don't shy away from either one. And there might be some elements of your well-being that needs more adaptability versus other elements that might need more futuristic. So there's really infinite ways that you can use those top themes of yours and apply them to all those different aspects of your life. So
Yeah,
that's what I do. I
uh,
I
go
yeah,
ahead.
I think you know, um, I mentioned competition a little bit. So competition is really kind of comparing yourself to others or really drawing inspiration um, compared to others. Whereas maximizers slightly different, obviously not opposite. But let's say you've got a physical well-being goal that you want to. Let's say you want to improve your 5K, um, but uh, for somebody who has high competition, their goal might actually be, well, I do want to improve my 5K, but actually I want to beat my next door neighbor in this 5K.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to make sure that I train well enough and I live healthy enough that I'm going to beat my neighbor. Whereas maximizer, you might say, well, last year I ran that 5K in 30 minutes. I just want to shave off a couple of minutes off of my time. And so that's going to be what I set my target to.
There's some great advice coming in, by the way, in the chat
Cool.
on this. That'll be available afterwards here on LinkedIn. If you go back to the video, the chat will be available. One of the things, going back to that example of futuristic, let's see, Brandon said futuristic and adaptability, and I would kind of the way I would kind of frame it, thinking about that, I have adaptability lower in my top 10 and very little futuristic, but thinking ahead, right? Looking out into the future, how can I create multiple options for myself to
Hmm.
be able to achieve the same goal? Right. For someone with futuristic and adaptability, there may be these opportunities not to come up with one way to get it done, but how they're the perfect opportunist, right? Looking ahead, how can I wait for certain opportunities to come along? I think someone else had mentioned maximizer in there, that they also had maximizer in that. And then how can I create these multiple ways of getting to the same that have the best possible outcome, right? I think
Hmm.
that's one of those ways to set that in place. And then to add to some, so that's how I blend my strengths in. And then I might kind of start adding in time goals, right? Okay, I want to see these kinds of things happen by fill in, because the adaptability may not want to put a time on it, but the
Hmm.
futuristic may need that, right?
Hmm.
So maybe start thinking through by the end of the quarter, by the end of this quarter, by the end of this month, and then maybe put some things, because the measurement tells us how we know we got there. Because this is where I think a lot of folks drop, kind of drop the ball or fumble on goals. They never know when they're actually there, right? Let's set some things. Ryan, you've got high discipline, right, in yours. You spend probably a bunch of time knowing you actually got there. How important is that aspect in goal setting, and how can we use strengths to kind of help us realize, hey, we've got to this milestone?
Yeah, definitely. So it's, um, I think what we need to do is, in when we're navigating all these frameworks and kind of deciding what goal what goals we need to set, it's important to also understand, who we're sharing these goals with,
Mm.
and that we're not just keeping them saved in our own personal files without anyone else um, you know realizing what they are. So I think having that accountability, and not necessarily accountability sounds maybe too strict, but having someone who really is going to support you and encourage you to achieve those is so important. So rather than just nose to the grindstone constantly, we're talking with partners who we know have our best interest in mind. Could be your manager, could be best friends at work, could be your spouse, could be your best friend outside of work. And that way we can take some time to celebrate the successes, and then kind of like with that smarter framework, kind of evaluate and reset.
Amy had asked a question based on a comment I made. She said, "Did you say that the Strengths Insight Guide factors in all 34 or top five for the top five?" And yes, it takes into account your entire 34, but lists them by the top five in that report. So anyone who's taken Clifton Strengths and taken the top five has that report available to them. It lives side by side with the standard report that has the standard definitions available in Gallup Access. If you haven't logged in a while, go to gallup.com/Clifton Strengths. Log in and check out the reports that are available to you there as well. I want to challenge you in the 9 minutes or so that we have left. I'd love to really see some strengths based goals show up in chat. So let's see if we can get those going, measurable, time based, and weaving your themes in, right? And let's get some
Hmm.
simple, maybe get some simple ones, that so we can show them on the screen. Ryan, while they're typing those in, I want to ask you this in question: what's the importance of a coach in helping people achieve these goals? What's that role? So whether I'm being coached or I am the coach, how important
Hmm.
is a coach's role in goals?
Yeah, so coach can definitely help you figure out any of these kind of complicated, you know, um, combinations of strengths that you might have, and of course the complicated combination and interrelatedness of well-being. So we know that with the five elements of well-being, they are interdependent on each other, and if we're setting our goals and we don't have kind of some wholesomeness to it, if we're just setting career goals and maybe neglecting some relationship goals or some financial goals or some health goals, then there's potential for discombobulation. So a coach can really help come in and kind of evaluate and give advice, and perhaps all you need to do is set just the career goals, but then the coach can help you understand how those career goals can also trickle down and impact those other elements of life that we know are so important.
Are you've got a fan already? Someone says, "Choose and infuse" are my takeaway nuggets from today. So I think
Sweet,
there's
yeah.
a great opportunity. I think the importance of a coach too is to put it out there in the universe somewhere. Tell somebody, right? We had
Yeah.
someone say, "Tell anyone." I told my Pilates instructor one of my goals: put it out in the world, just not in my own head. I
Yeah.
think having or telling a coach builds in some accountability to it, right? We have some you've Ryan, you've coached me for the 14 years that I've been here
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
Gallup, and we didn't achieve them all, but we achieved many of them because we would get together on a regular basis, and you'd say, "Okay, let's talk about this. How are we doing it?"
Mhm.
And it was great accountability. Another comment: I've been aiming my achiever. I love this one, by the way. I've been aiming and will continue to do so. I'm achiever, maximizer, strategic to accomplish the goal of earning my PhD in leadership by May 2022. Right
Mm.
there we go. Sounds fairly realistic and reasonable. We've got some strengths associated with it. We've got a time frame in there, and we know we've achieved it when we've gotten the PhD. Right. I love that, right? It gets
Yeah.
it gets to the
It's
point and it gets us there. And you wanna add any comments to that?
Yeah, I think so. That's great. This is something that you put on a sticky note or something that you can share easily, but then you can really flesh it out. um, behind the scenes or with your coach, and or your manager or whomever is best positioned to support you with this goal, and really talk about the details about how those specific strengths will come into play, and when you can use them, how you can use them, and how they interact with each other.
Karen makes a comment. I aim to volunteer at least once a month. I like that by using my futuristic and strategic to research opportunities and my connectedness to pursue those
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that I feel called towards. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
a great, right? That's a great measurable. Libby says, put away Christmas decorations by MLK Day. Libby, let me encourage you. What are you going to use? Like, what themes do you have? Like, what's going to drive you to get that, to get that
Mm-hmm.
goal
Well,
done?
that's good. I mean, Karen and Livia, those are two great goals, and Jim, kudos for selecting those back to back. I think it's important to not take all of our goals too seriously,
Mm,
and have some fun with them. Remember, strengths are areas of excellence, ease, and enjoyment. So we need to make sure that this is fun, and that we're doing things that are enjoyable. And if they're not, it's unlikely that we're using our top strengths.
mm. Some great goals that are coming in now. Kara says, by March 26th, using my empathy and body communication strengths, I will help my dog decrease her separation anxiety.
Yes.
Like, this is going to be, we have all these pets, right, that we've acquired during the pandemic, and to feel safe and secure for up to 4 hours on our own. I love that because there's some things that we can measure in that. There's some things that we can point to. We can know if we're getting there, right?
Hmm.
Serenity says, using my achiever to make my next move professionally by the end of this school year. Again, great measurement. And they're
Hmm.
using my communication to find new opportunities and possibilities by networking. I think I might also add to a goal like that. Okay, so the who in it, like, who do I actually need to talk to for those opportunities? Where am I going to find those opportunities? Where they sometimes we say, well, I'm going to talk to some folks about it, but who are we actually going to talk about? How are we going to kind of make that goal happen? Ryan, we have just a few minutes left. Anything else
Yeah.
you want to add in
So
here?
yeah, I do agree with you, Jim. Who is so important. I also think coaches, and as we're evaluating, we need to really understand why,
Mm,
and we need to get at the why we want to achieve these goals that we're writing down, or even the visions that we haven't necessarily written down, but we know we want, and understand why we we desire that, and that will really help us create more granular details when we're creating these goals.
Yeah, the R in smarter, if we're going to go with that for a
Yeah.
second, I think it's important that it could represent reward. I think oftentimes you led with this in the very beginning. We come at goals because we're trying to punish ourselves for
Hmm.
things we didn't get done
Yeah.
or didn't do last year, and so we're like, I'm gonna punish myself. I think motivation, we know, and you alluded to this with the positivity of it. I think the reward, that positivity piece, helps us keep going with it, right? It helps us kind of like, oh, wait a minute, and maybe not the reward even the at the very end, but kind of building in a set of
Yeah.
rewards,
Milestones. Hmm.
yeah, throughout that. And I'm talking about genuine strength-based rewards. How can we do things for ourselves that keep us motivated, right? In that,
Hmm.
oftentimes diets fail because we get too extreme with them too early, and then we just end up hungry.
Hmm.
And nobody wants to be hungry, right? In that setting,
Exactly.
getting rewards. Do you want to add anything else to that as
No,
well
I
as we
think
think
that's
about?
beautiful. So we gave everyone a few different ways to think about your R. So R traditionally is either relevant or realistic. Um, maybe it's also reward. So and then you're also giving yourself the opportunity to call it smarts, by adding your strengths at the end of it, and just kind of encapsulating it all. So that was really nice, Jim. I appreciate that one.
Ryan, any other tools in this, the final 30 seconds that we have? Any other tools that you throw out there to kind of help people
We've actually
set these strengths-based goals?
Yeah, we've actually got a great new web page out there. It's called Creating Strengths Based Goals, I believe is the actual name of it. And but anyway, we'll put that in the show notes, Jim. And it's a great way to kind of walk through some of the topics that we discussed here today, and to kind of take action on all these topics.
Yeah, and there's even a downloadable form on there that
Yeah,
you get PDF you can get and print or do it online and help set your own goals or use in your coaching to help others set goals. Riley, shake your
exactly.
head. If can you put that link in the chat? Will that show up? Okay, she's given me the thumbs up, so hopefully that will appear
Awesome.
out there for you as well. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today. Our goal was to get through this in 30 minutes. We're at 30 minutes and 18 seconds. I'm going to call it good. Ryan, my positivity says I think we
Perfect.
made it. Ryan, thanks for coming out today and being part of this.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Jim.
Everybody that's joining us live, thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here for our next one. Make sure before you leave, make sure you followed this Clifton Strengths page on LinkedIn there so that you get notifications whenever we do this here in the future because you're going to want to be involved. Thanks for coming out.